Good morning. I want to talk today about the lunar month from June 6th through July 5th for countries and people. And I break this up into two parts so it doesn't get too long. So we're going to do part one. And let me see if I can share my screen here. And let's see. I've got to get rid of some panels and things so I can see what I'm doing. So just bear with me as usual. Okay, and I think we're ready to begin. So this is the lunar month for countries and people, part one. And we'll talk about America, Biden, Trump, China, Israel, Netanyahu, Hamas, and Iran. And the lunar month is going to go from June 6th through July 5th. Okay. Now, in all of these presentations, I'll begin with a buy wheel, where the inner wheel represents the chart of the country or person I'm looking at. And for America, I tend to prefer the July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Declaration for Independence by the Continental Congress. I think that works a little bit better than July 4th, 1776 charts. But if you want to use a July 4th chart, such as the Sibley chart, they both work. I just think this one often works just a little bit better. But as I say, the creation of America was not a single event. It was it was the culmination of several events. And there are several notable events in the creation of America, and each of those yields a chart that can result in good information. And let's see, on the outer wheel, I'll always have the full moon on June 21st, so that's halfway through the lunar month, and hence the aspects that I want to talk about for that lunar month, you'll usually see them present in this chart that compares the new moon to a natal chart. Oh, also, if you do prefer to use a July 4th, 1776 chart for America, the main difference is going to be, aside from having a different ascendant midheaven, the main difference will be that the moon has moved from Capricorn into Aquarius. So anything I say about aspects to the moon, that will apply only to the July 2nd, 1776 chart. Anyway, here is what is going on in this upcoming lunar month for America. We begin with transiting Neptune, making a square to natal Venus. Transiting Neptune is at 29 plus degrees of Pisces. Whenever we get into the 29th degree of a sign for a planet, we call that the anaretic degree. It's almost at the end of a cycle. Whenever we're at the end of a cycle, one thing is dying, so something else can be born. And when something is dying, that's when a lot of the ugly stuff comes out. That is when things tend to be falling apart a bit, and those things you've repressed tend to emerge to the surface. And for better or worse, Neptune is going to stay at 29 plus degrees Pisces for the whole summer. This is really going to be a long lasting position for Neptune. And Neptune in Pisces, it can represent vision and inspiration, your dreams. It can also represent your irrational fears, misinformation, and all sorts of delusion. And unfortunately, America has not had good results whenever Neptune has been making a square to this natal Venus. We had the same kind of aspect and effect at the start of the Civil War. Uh, Neptune was just about to move into Aries, but when the Confederates soldiers fired upon Fort Sumter on April 12th, 1861, Neptune was right at the end of Pisces, just like it is now. And then on December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Neptune was again making a strong square to natal Venus, but this time it was over here, it was at 29 degrees of Virgo, making that square. Well, Venus, among other things, it represents our right nonverbal brain. Those things we just like and don't like on a nonverbal level. And that leads, of course, to our value system. But it represents how we react to things without putting that into words, whether we experience something as good or as bad. And when Neptune is squaring this, well, that is when passions can be inflamed. People can react with their gut, but not with their logical, rational brain necessarily. And this is when we're also very susceptible to all sorts of misinformation. So, this month and this summer, it's going to be one to keep an eye on for America. Are we going to get involved in conflict either at home or abroad? Astrologically, we can't really say. All we can tell you is what the astrological weather is, and that an aspect like this tends to perhaps inflame passions and result in misinformation and actions that aren't logical. But as for exactly what takes place, that depends upon the choices that individuals make. And astrology doesn't tell you what choice a particular individual is going to make. It only tells you what the surrounding cosmic weather is going to be, not how people decide to react to that weather. So, this does not necessarily mean that we're going to have violence or get involved with conflict domestically or internationally, but it does raise the possibility of such an outcome. Now, this lunar month, we're also going to have transiting Saturn square natal Mars, and that's going to add fuel to the fire. Mars is uh, assertion, action, but also aggression and violence. Saturn is restriction, regulation. It can cause frustration. So the frustrations that people have could also lead to some violence this lunar month. Hopefully, that won't be the case. Again, all I can tell you is what the weather is, not how people are going to react to that weather. So, most likely, a lot of people are going to be acting based upon passions, delusions, or misinformation, and a lot of people are going to be somewhat angry and frustrated. But whether they express that in a violent way or not, I can't say for certain. But there is a heightened risk, possibility, probability of such outcomes. Now, we also have transiting Chiron square natal Uranus. And let's see, that's going to be, I'm sorry, making a semi-square to natal Uranus. That's Chiron here, Uranus over here. That can cause some sudden wounding of some sort in America and some feelings of rebellion and revolution. And that is going to be reinforced by the fact that transiting Uranus is making a semi-square to the natal sun. So, some unexpected events, possible wounding, revolutionary events. Those are going to have a heightened probability for this upcoming lunar month from June 6th to July 5th. Now, on the good side, transiting Uranus is making a trine to the natal moon in this July 2nd chart, not in the July 4th charts. And it's also making a sextile to natal Mercury. This will help smooth things out a bit. There will also be some positive creativity uh, and breakthroughs and sudden developments this month. This could affect scientific research. It could affect commerce for the country. There could be some good innovations that occur this month. Now, if we look at this chart, uh, these bars will tell you when each aspect will be in effect and if and when they become exact. For instance, Uranus sextile Mercury and Uranus trine Moon, those will be exact on June 17th and 18th, respectively. And they're going to be in effect throughout the entire lunar month. So that is good news for probably for America's economy and innovation. Neptune square natal Venus, that is in effect throughout the entire lunar month and the entire summer. It doesn't become exact, however, this lunar month. And it's not going to become exact this summer because toward the end of this lunar month, Neptune is going to turn retrograde. And that's probably a good thing. There may be some tensions that increase throughout the month, but when we get to the end, Neptune will be moving retrograde, pulling away from that exact square, and that may help calm things down a bit. So, in terms of a violent outcome, probably this lunar month is the most dangerous one. Now, Saturn square Mars, it's going to be in effect throughout the entire lunar month. It doesn't become exact. And at the end of June, just as Neptune turns retrograde, Saturn is going to turn retrograde also. And so as we get into July, those tensions are going to very slowly start easing up. Now, Chiron semi-square Uranus, that starts to take effect about mid-June. I'm using a 1-degree orb for these things. And that slowly builds. It doesn't become exact this month, but it's increasing in strength. And this can be some unexpected wounding of some sort. Also a chance for unexpected enlightenment, but the probability of that is probably a little less overall for the country when compared to unexpected wounding. And Uranus semi-square Sun, that begins to take effect around the third week of June, and it becomes exact on July 12th, which is into the next lunar month. So some sort of unexpected events occurring for the country are more likely in the latter part of June and sometime in July. And this Uranus trine Pluto here, that doesn't go into effect until way into the next lunar month. So we'll talk about that next time. Okay, let's move on to Biden. Now, the main thing in his chart is transiting Pluto square the natal moon. He's had that exact before. It became near exact in summer of 2023. And it's going to plague him throughout much of this year. Now, in extreme cases, this could cause someone to die. And the moon does rule his 8th house of death and transformation. At the very least, the moon rules the physical body and mental state. Pluto is a lot of pressure and trauma. He could have a severe illness of some sort. At the very least, we expect some sort of trauma or mental pressure to be bearing down upon him. Now, in the past, whenever this square has been exact or gotten close to being exact, what has happened, what has come up for him, uh, have been the trial, has been the trial and tribulations of his son Hunter. And that makes sense because this moon, his natal moon, is in the fifth house, which rules children. And that is what is happening right now. His son Hunter Biden is about to go on trial. And I've heard reports on the news that this is actually causing him a lot of anguish, even though he doesn't show that publicly so much. So he's under pressure, but he's a mature individual who has learned how to handle pressure well. And so I hope that nothing happens that affects his health or livelihood too much. Now, he also has transiting Saturn opposite his natal midheaven. Usually, when Saturn is conjunct the midheaven, we come into the limelight. We achieve a lot of our success that we've been working hard for in life. And when Saturn is conjunct the cusp of the fourth house opposite the midheaven, that's when we usually retreat from the limelight and from public life and focus more on our personal life and our personal environment and family. Well, Biden is a president. He has to engage with concerns of the country and the world in a very public way. But obviously, at this time, I'm sure he is very focused on family, his family too, as Hunter Biden, his son, goes to trial. Now, he has some good things going on in his chart. Transiting Pluto is making a trine to his natal Neptune. His natal Neptune makes a trine to his natal Uranus. And while the aspect between transiting Pluto and natal Uranus is slightly outside of that 1 degree orb I'm using, in this case, this transiting Pluto is pretty much going to complete a grand trine here between Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Now, the way in which this will likely affect President Biden is this is really going to bring a lot of transcendent thought into his mind during this particular lunar month. Neptune is vision, Uranus is creativity and innovation, Pluto is power and transformation. He is going to be thinking and feeling things on a very, very high level. Uh, it may not be so easy for to express those things to the public. They may not be so readily apparent to other people that he is functioning at this very high level, but he is. He's going to be a person of vision this month, a person of innovation, and a person who knows how to wield power. Now, in addition to this, transiting Uranus is making a sextile to his natal Jupiter. That is going to help bring more of the same. Higher level thinking and higher level creativity and innovation. And Pluto is the ruler of Sagittarius, which he has on the cusp of the first house. So this is really going to benefit him greatly. Now, if we look to see when things are going to be making an impact, well, those aspects I just talked about, they're all going to be in effect for the entire lunar month. Uh, Pluto square natal moon, that becomes exact in the next lunar month on July 18th. Uh, Uranus sextile Jupiter and Pluto trine Neptune, those are exact on June 18th and 24th, respectively. Saturn in opposition to midheaven, that's not going to become exact during this lunar month because at the end of June, Saturn's going to turn retrograde. And Saturn is not going to make an exact opposition to Biden's midheaven until I think around February 22nd of 2025. but it will be in effect throughout the entire lunar month. So I expect that he will have a significant focus on his family and his personal life during this month. Okay, so he's got some good things, he's got some tense things going on. Now let's take a look at Trump's chart. Main difference I see between Trump and Biden is that whereas Biden is a mature individual who knows how to handle crises and tough situations, Trump, to all appearances, is not. And that makes him very predictable. When something happens to him, it's predictable he'll be angry. It's predictable he'll lash out. It's predictable that he'll always blame others for his predicament. Now, if we look to see what is going on in his chart, this is, in a sense, kind of a continuation of what we've been seeing in the last few weeks, where he's had some wounding. He's now a convicted felon, convicted on all 34 counts that were brought against him in a trial. And he's also getting some healing or support from his base. Uh, he's been wounded, but in response, his base just throws more adulation upon him. And probably more importantly to him, they throw more money his way. His campaign contributions are now way up. So that's already going on in his life. And when we look at his aspects for this lunar month, we see that continuing. Now, on the 10th side, transiting Uranus is conjunct his midheaven and square his natal Mars. Conjunct the midheaven has to do with our status in society. So this represents sudden changes to our status. Square his natal Mars, he is most likely going to get very angry uh, with people. But on the good side, we have transiting Chiron sextile, his natal sun. There's transiting Chiron here, his natal sun here. That is going to bring some healing into his life. And transiting Uranus, sextile his natal Venus. Venus rules his 10th house, and that is going to help elevate uh, his status. Now, the transiting Chiron square natal Saturn, I hope I mentioned that. I may have just jumped over that one, but let's go back to it. His natal Saturn is conjunct his natal Venus, so when things affect Saturn, it tends to affect Venus and hence his status in society also. So we have, some conflicting poles, one toward wounding, one toward healing. They're both out there. They're both in effect, and they're both happening side by side. Transiting Chiron, where his natal Saturn, that tends to wound his status in society, wound his control over things. So, on the one hand, he's had these sudden changes to his status. He's a convicted felon. He's very angry about that, and his status has been wounded. But among his base, he's getting healing. He's getting support, which is helping to heal him. He's getting money, which is keeping his campaign going. And he's probably getting some support from unexpected sources as a result of transiting Uranus sextile his natal Venus. So if we look at the bar graph, we see that uh, Chiron sextile his natal Sun and Uranus sextile his Venus. The first one is in effect throughout the entire lunar month. The second is in effect throughout almost the entire lunar month. So that will be to his benefit. If we look at Uranus conjunct his midheaven, well, that peaked around June 3rd, and it's going to fade and be out of the picture by around the 3rd week of June. But then in mid-month, we pick up with Chiron, square his natal Saturn, and that is growing in strength. So some sort of wounding will probably continue. When we get into July, that's when the square between transiting Uranus and Mars starts to take effect. It becomes exact in the next lunar month on July 29th. So you'll experience a little bit more wounding probably once we get in to July. Wounding, change in status, change in lots of anger. But he's also getting this healing from his face. So it's a mixed bag. Now, if we look at China, there's going to be a lot of problems for China in this lunar month. However, China is not an entirely open society. I think it's a little bit more open than Russia in terms of news about what's going on. But again, there can be things happening that we don't hear about in China. Well, on the 10th side, transiting Chiron, right over here is square natal Jupiter, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is on the cusp of the first house for China. Jupiter is in the second house. There's probably going to be some economic wounding for China. And I've been hearing reports here and there about China's economy slowing down and having trouble in a variety of sectors. Transiting Pluto is conjunct natal moon and making a semi-square to the ascendant. Okay, Pluto's death and transformation. The moon is people. The moon is in the second house, which has to do with finances, the economy. The ascendant is has a lot to do with the country itself, how it views itself. And this also suggests there are going to be impacts on China's economy this month, maybe even some actual deaths of people. And they're also, I believe, having problems in China as a result of low birth rates. They're not producing in the country enough people to keep the economy going. So there are some difficulties for China during this lunar month. We also have transiting Neptune, making a sesquiquadrant to natal Mars. And this could result in some saber rattling by China, also some misinformation or inflamed passions being involved in one way or another. Mars is in the 8th house, which is traditionally the house of death. Hopefully, we won't be seeing deaths as a result of some misstep or misadventure. But the 8th house is also other people's money. So somehow money from other countries may be involved in problems that China experiences during this lunar month. Now, the one saving grace that China has is that transiting Saturn is going to be making a trine to natal Venus, and that will help stabilize things. Uh, Saturn is control and regulation. Venus, those things we value, our right brain, our nonverbal brain. And so people may be feeling relatively good, maybe feeling that things have stabilized and are under control, in spite of these other troubles or tensions that I see here. Again, China is not a completely open society, so things can be going on that we don't hear about. Nonetheless, I'll try and keep an eye on China for this lunar month to see what kind of wounding occurs, and particularly wounding to the economy and how people in the country are affected. Okay, Here's our bar graph for China. Shows when things are in effect and the dates they become exact. And June will probably be the most intense month. That's when all these aspects become exact and are strongest. But everything I've talked about is in effect for the entire lunar month. Once we get into July, some of these difficulties will start to fade, except for Neptune sesquiquadrate Mars. And fortunately, Saturn trine Venus is going to be very strong in both June and July, and we have two exact aspects, one on June 16th approximately, the other around July 12th. And now let's turn our attention to the Middle East. And I'll start with transiting Chiron opposite natal ascendant. This represents wounding to the country of Israel. And Chiron it's very, very close to exact conjunction with the descendant. This can represent other countries and their current criticism of Israel and Israel's actions in its war with Hamas in Gaza. Let's see, we also have transiting Saturn, sesquiquadrate, natal moon. This puts some restrictions on Israel's leadership. Also, the people. The moon rules the people, but it's in the 10th house, which has to do with leadership and Netanyahu. And transiting Uranus is making a sesquiquadrate with natal Neptune. Probably some unexpected things are going to occur that affect Israel in a negative way. And since Neptune is involved, this could evolve misinformation or some kind of distorted information that affects relationships with others, since Neptune is in the sign of Libra. Okay, transiting Uranus is making a sextile to the natal midheaven, and that bodes well for Netanyahu. This is a beneficial aspect to leadership. We had this other not so beneficial sesquiquadrate to natal moon in the 10th house, so that impacts leadership also. Netanyahu might be able to hold on to power after all. But there's going to be a lot of tensions here. And one thing I want to point out is transiting Uranus has just moved past this conjunction with Israel's natal sun. Now, why is this important? Well, in Israel's natal chart, I've talked about this in other presentations, but in the natal chart, you see an opposition between Sun and Chiron. At its best, the higher aspects of Chiron become integrated with the Sun, and Israel fulfills its mission of being a light unto the nations. At its worst, Israel is wounded, it wounds in return, which causes more wounding for Israel. It just goes back and forth. On the day that Hamas attacked Israel, October 27th, October 7th, 2023, there was an opposition between Sun and Chiron in the sky. And aside from the other tense aspects, like Mars square Pluto on that day, that opposition of Sun with Chiron created an incredible resonance with the chart of Israel. And furthermore, Uranus was at about 22 degrees of Taurus, activating that Sun Chiron opposition. So that's a lot of the astrology behind what started this war between Israel and Hamas. And around April 8th, when things were heating up again, Uranus once again was activating this opposition between Sun and Chiron. But now it's starting to move past it. And so we might get some ceasefires, hopefully. We might get a pause or de-escalation of violence throughout the summer. But in late fall, a couple of things happen. One, Chiron returns to the position it occupied at the time of the April 8th solar eclipse. So that can bring back wounding or conditions that were present around April 8th. And Uranus will go retrograde and it will activate the Sun Chiron opposition again. Hence, regardless of whatever easing of tensions we get this summer, there is a very good chance that things will heat up again in November, December of 2024 or early 2025 when transing Uranus is activating the Sun Chiron opposition in Israel's chart once again. Okay, this graph will show you when things are going to be making an impact. And Chiron opposition ascendant, Saturn sesquiquadrate the moon, Uranus making a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. Do I have this here? Yeah, I got that here. Those are going to be in effect throughout the entire lunar month. And it looks like transing Uranus making a sextile to the midheaven. That will also be in effect uh, throughout the entire lunar month. It peaks on June 16th. As we get into the next lunar month, that fades and goes away. But for this month, this could mean that Netanyahu's position as head of the government may remain safe. Now, if we look at Netanyahu's chart, there's a lot of tensions in his chart this lunar month, but one saving grace. He's going to go through a lot of woundings and unexpected twists and turns. First, transing Chiron is making a sesquiquadrate to natal Chiron. So there's some wounding for you. Transiting Uranus is making a sesquiquadrate to natal Mercury. That suggests unexpected changes in status since Mercury's in the 10th house. Transiting Chiron is making a square to his natal Germany. Jupiter, his natal Jupiter. And Jupiter rules his first house of Sagittarius. It seems like we've seen a lot of Sagittarian ascendants here so far. Let's go back and just take a look at that because that's interesting. So Sagittarius rising for Netanyahu. Libra rising for Israel and for America. Sagittarius rising for China. And Leo rising for Trump. If you use the Sibley chart for, Biden has Sagittarius rising too. If you use the Sibley chart, that July 4th chart for America, it has Sagittarius rising. That's interesting. A lot of things are going on with charts that have Sagittarius rising. So this square of transing Chiron to natal Jupiter, that is going to affect and wound Netanyahu personally, and possibly financially also. Transing Pluto, sesquiquadrate his natal Saturn, that causes some additional frustrations and transformations regarding various things. And since Saturn rules his second house, that could affect him financially also. Transiting Uranus, making a square to his Mars, that could make him angry and aggressive with regard to various things. Okay, now his one saving grace is transiting Uranus, is going to be making a trine to his natal Jupiter. His natal Jupiter makes a trine to his midheaven, and even though We're a little bit out of this 1 degree orb here. Transing Uranus could complete this a grand trine that involves transing Uranus, natal Jupiter, and natal midheaven, and that could help him retain power in Israel. So this one good aspect could help him a lot in the face of all these negative aspects. Now, unfortunately, that one good aspect, it runs out of steam by around the middle of June. And that is going to leave him only with these tensions to deal with. Chiron sesquiquadrate natal Chiron, transing Uranus sesquiquadrate natal Mercury, transing Chiron square natal Jupiter. That kicks in about the third week of June. And then Pluto sesquiquadrate natal Saturn and Uranus square natal Mars. Those don't really kick in until the beginning of July. Okay, what about Hamas? Well, it's going to continue to experience fanaticism and some restriction, but it's also going to get some healing and help from most likely Iran or other countries that support its values or lack thereof. Okay, transiting Neptune, sesquiquadrate natal moon. This could inflame the fanaticism of Hamas, their delusions that they operate under, their misinformation. Transing Saturn conjunct Ascendant, that has to do with the restrictions, most likely, that Hamas will feel in this lunar month. But transing Chiron, making a trine to natal Saturn and natal midheaven, that signifies healing and support that Hamas will probably get from those who like what Hamas is doing, and most likely that is Iran. Maybe Russia will be involved too, maybe some other countries that we're not aware of. Okay, now if we look to see when things are going to be in effect, well, everything is going to be lasting pretty much the entire lunar month. The good things, Chiron trine Saturn and midheaven, they're lasting pretty much from one lunar month to the other. The tense things, Neptune sesquiquadrate moon, Saturn conjunct ascendant, they will be in effect the entire lunar month. Okay. And lastly, let's take a look at Iran. It has a lot of tensions, but I feel like that society is very closed and that there are lots of things happening we don't get news about. Also, Iran is the leadership. It has tight control over Iranian society. And so even when there's a lot of tensions, it may not be enough to overthrow the leadership. But here's what's happening. Transcend Chiron is squaring midheaven. This square was in effect when the Iranian president died in a helicopter crash, and this represents continued wounding to leadership, most likely. Transcend Pluto is going through the 10th house in opposition to natal Jupiter. Uh, the Pluto represents power and transformation, death and transformation, lots of power. This could signal a transformation of leadership. Well, certainly they're going to get a new leader, but based upon their past history, this will probably also manifest as somewhat of a crackdown by leadership upon its own society, its own people, restricting their growth, their ability to expand. So that does not look good for Iran internally. Transiting Saturn is squaring natal Neptune right over here and making a semi-square to natal Chiron, which is conjunct Iran's ascendant. So Iran will probably experience continued restriction, uh, maybe some financial difficulties, since Neptune is in the eighth house, which has to do with other people's money. So I kind of expect continued restrictions on Iran's trade and commerce with other countries and more wounding for Iran. Now, the one saving grace will be transiting Chiron, making a sextile to natal Sun and Mercury. So there will be some sort of healing in some way coming from perhaps sources unknown. Uh, the people in the country may be able to provide healing for themselves, for instance, and continue to do some creative work in spite of the difficulties the country is undergoing. Or it may be other countries who uh, are allies of Iran who lend a hand and help out Iran at times when it needs it. Okay, if we look at when these aspects are in effect, Chiron sextile Sun, which brings about healing, that will last through a little bit past mid-June, but Chiron sextile Mercury, that is going to be strong throughout the entire lunar month, becomes exact in the next one. So that could do a lot to help heal the people and the economy. But Chiron square midheaven, there's still a crisis in leadership throughout the entire lunar month. That's exact on the 16th. Pluto in opposition to Jupiter. Look to see what happens to leadership and oppression of the people during this lunar month. That's exact on June 10th. And Saturn square Neptune, that doesn't become exact during this period, but it is in effect throughout the entire lunar month. Okay, and I believe that is going to be it for part one of the lunar month for countries and people. So let me stop sharing my screen here. And I'm back. So I hope that was informative for you. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you join me for part two, where I'll talk about Putin, Russia, Ukraine, uh, King Charles, Princess Kate, uh, Pope Francis, and maybe some other things. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you uh, join me again. And in the meantime, as usual, I'll say be kind to yourself, be kind to others, make decisions that will help make your life and the world a better place. And uh, with that, I'll also say just so long and be well. Okay, so long and join me again, I hope. So long.